My husband promised to keep my pregnancy secret until 12 weeks because I had lost one before. 4 days later, I found out he had already told 14 people, so I spent that Saturday calling every single one of them myself while he sat in the living room and listened. I found out on a Tuesday. 2 pink lines on a test I had taken alone in the bathroom at 6 in the morning before my husband was awake, sitting on the edge of the tub with my hands not entirely steady, looking at something I had wanted for 2 years and was suddenly terrified to hold. I was 8 weeks along. I knew because I had already seen a doctor, already had the first appointment, already heard the heartbeat on a small screen in a dim room while a technician moved a wand across my stomach, and I lay there alone because I had not told anyone yet, not even Daniel, because I had lost a pregnancy 14 months earlier at 11 weeks, and the grief of that loss had done something to me that I was still, 14 months later, not finished understanding. The first time I had told everyone immediately. Parents, siblings, friends, the excited announcement at 8 weeks because 8 weeks felt safe and we were happy and we did not know yet what not safe looked like. And then at 11 weeks we found out. And then we had to untell everyone. Which is its own specific and brutal kind of grief that people who have not done it cannot fully understand. The telling. The untelling. The conversations where you have to say the thing out loud over and over to people who are sad for you in ways that are genuine and also, somehow, make it worse. I had decided this time would be different. This time I was waiting until 12 weeks. Until the first trimester screening came back clear. Until I had something in my hands that felt like solid ground before I invited anyone else to stand on it. I told Daniel that morning when he came downstairs and found me at the kitchen table with the test in front of me. I watched his face break open into something I can only describe as pure. He came around the table and held me for a long time without saying anything. And when he finally spoke, he said, "We're going to be okay this time. I can feel it." I said, "I need us to keep this between us. Just us. Until 12 weeks. Until we know." I looked at him when I said it. Directly. I needed him to understand that I was not asking casually. I was asking from the place where the loss lived. From the memory of untelling. From 14 months of carrying something quietly that I had once carried out loud and had paid a price for. He said, "Of course. Whatever you need. Just us." He said it like he meant it. He did not mean it. I found out 4 days later. My sister-in-law Patrice called me on a Saturday morning, ostensibly to catch up, and within 4 minutes of conversation said, "So Daniel tells me you have some exciting news." The kitchen went very quiet around me. I said, "What did he tell you?" She said, in the voice of someone who has just understood they have stepped directly into something, "Oh. Was I not supposed to know?" I said, "How many people did he tell?" Longer pause. She said, He called his mom. And his brother. And I think maybe a few other people. Rachel, I'm sorry, I thought you knew he had told us." I said, "When did he call?" She said, "Wednesday night." Wednesday night. One day after I asked him to keep it between us. One day after he sat across from me at the kitchen table and said, "Whatever you need, just us," and looked me in the eyes when he said it. I said, "Thank you for telling me, Patrice." I hung up. I sat at the kitchen table in the same chair where I had shown him the test 4 days ago, and I felt something happen inside me that was not anger exactly. It was colder than anger. It was the specific cold of a person who has just understood that the person they trusted most with something fragile had treated that fragile thing carelessly. Daniel was upstairs. I could hear him moving around in the bedroom. I did not go upstairs. I picked up my phone and I started making calls. I want to tell you who Daniel is before I tell you what I did. Because he is not a villain and I am not going to pretend he is. He is a good man in most of the ways that count. Generous, genuinely funny, the kind of husband who notices when you are tired before you say anything and just quietly takes things off your plate. We had been together 7 years and married for 4, and the marriage was good in the specific way of two people who had learned each other's rhythms and had stopped fighting about the small things and had built something that felt, most of the time, like a place you wanted to be. He is also a man who has a family that operates on a particular frequency. His mother, Carol, is warm and loving and completely incapable of keeping anything to herself. She is the kind of woman who processes her emotions communally, out loud, in real time, with everyone in her immediate circle. His brother Marcus is similar. His sister-in-law Patrice slightly less so, which is why she was the one who called me to catch up and accidentally confirmed what had happened. Daniel had grown up in a house where good news was shared immediately and widely, and where keeping something to yourself felt not like privacy but like withholding. I had known this about him for 7 years. What I had not fully reckoned with was that in a conflict between his family's communication patterns and my explicit request, his family would win without him even fully registering that a choice had been made. He had not told them to upset me. He had told them because he was happy and he did not know how to be happy quietly, and his family was the place where his happiness went. I understood all of that. It did not change what he had done. And it did not change what I was about to do. I spent Saturday making calls. Not to confront anyone. Not to express feelings. To gather information. I called his mother, Carol. I told her I was just checking in and I was so happy Daniel had shared the news, and asked her who she had already told. She gave me a list of 7 people without any awareness that she was doing anything except being helpful. She was thrilled. She had been waiting for grandchildren, she said. She had already told her sister. Her 2 closest friends. The woman from her book club who had known Daniel since he was 7. I thanked her warmly and hung up. I called Marcus. Same approach. He confirmed he had told his wife, which I already knew, and 2 friends who had known our family for years. He was excited. He asked how I was feeling. I said I was feeling a lot of things, and he took that as pregnancy emotions and said that was completely normal. I thanked him and hung up. By the end of Saturday I had a complete picture. Daniel had made 3 calls on Wednesday night. Those 3 calls had become, within 48 hours, at least 14 people who knew I was pregnant. 14 people who knew something I had specifically, clearly, with full explanation and eye contact, asked to stay between us and Daniel alone. I had my information. Now I needed his. Daniel came downstairs Saturday afternoon and found me at the kitchen table with my phone and a notepad. He asked what I was doing. I said I was just organizing some things. He kissed the top of my head and went to the kitchen for coffee, and I watched him move around the kitchen with the ease of a man who does not yet know that the conversation he is about to have is the most important one he has had in 4 years of marriage. I said, "How's your mom?" He said, "Haven't talked to her today." "Why?" I said, "She seemed excited when I talked to her this morning." He turned around. His face changed. Not dramatically. Just a slight recalibration around the eyes of someone who has just registered that the ground might not be what he thought it was. He said, "You talked to her." I said, "I did." "And Patrice?" "And Marcus?" He set his coffee cup down. I said, "Daniel, I need you to tell me what you did Wednesday night." He was quiet for a moment. Then he sat down across from me. And to his credit, he did not construct a defense immediately. He looked at the table and he said, "I called my mom. And then she called Marcus and Patrice. And I think she called a few other people." I said, 14. "As of this morning?" He looked up. I said, "I spent this morning calling your family. Not to confront anyone. Just to understand the full picture. 14 people know I am pregnant. One day after I asked you, specifically, with full explanation of why it mattered to me, to keep this between us." He said, "I know. I'm sorry. I was just so happy and I called my mom and it just..." I said, "I know you were happy. I know that's why you did it. I need you to understand that the reason doesn't change what happened. I told you why I was asking. I told you about the last time. I told you what untelling felt like. And one day later you called your mother." He said, "I wasn't thinking about..." I said, "I know you weren't thinking. That's the part we need to talk about." I folded my hands on the table. I looked at him. I said, "I am not going to pretend I'm not upset. I am. But I'm also not going to fight with you today. I'm going to do something else instead. And I need you to understand that what I'm about to do is not punishment. It's just the consequence of what you chose." He looked at me. He said, "What are you going to do?" I said, "I'm going to call everyone." I called Carol first. Not because she was the most important call, but because she had been the first one Daniel had called, and because she was the origin point of the 14 people, and because I needed to start somewhere, and starting at the beginning felt right. She answered on the second ring, warm and happy the way she had been that morning. I said, "Carol, I need to talk to you about what Daniel shared this week." She said, "Oh, sweetheart, I'm so thrilled, I've been..." I said, "I know. And I need you to know something. I asked Daniel to keep this between us until 12 weeks. Because of what happened last time. Because I needed to wait until I had more certainty before I could share this with anyone." Silence. I said, "He made those calls one day after I asked him not to. I found out this morning from Patrice. And I spent this morning understanding how far the news had traveled." Her voice shifted. The warmth was still there, but underneath it something else arrived. The specific discomfort of a woman who has just understood that she was an instrument in something her son did to his wife. She said, "Rachel, I didn't know he wasn't supposed to tell me." I said, "I know. That's not your fault. I'm not calling to blame you. I'm calling because I need you to understand where I am. I'm 8 weeks pregnant. I lost a pregnancy at 11 weeks 14 months ago. I am not yet certain this one is going to be okay. And now 14 people are carrying this news, and if something goes wrong, I will have to untell 14 people. She was quiet for a long time. Then she said, I'm so sorry. I didn't know about the last time. I said, Daniel knows. He was there. Another silence. Longer. The silence of a mother registering something specific about her son that she was not comfortable with. She said, What can I do? I said, I need you to ask everyone you told not to share further. I need the circle to stop expanding. I can't make it smaller, but I can try to stop it from getting bigger. She said she would call everyone that day. She did. I know because Patrice texted me that afternoon to say Carol had called and explained everything and that she was so sorry and that no one would say another word. I called Marcus next. Then 2 of the friends Carol had mentioned. Then the woman from the book club, who was mortified and kind and immediately offered to do whatever I needed. Each call was the same structure. Not accusatory. Not emotional in the performed sense. Just honest. Here is what I asked for. Here is what happened. Here is where I am. Here is what I need from you now. By the end of Saturday, I had spoken to everyone on the list. Daniel sat in the living room while I made the calls. He could hear some of them from where he was sitting. He did not interrupt. He did not try to explain himself to anyone. He just sat there and listened to his wife call his family and friends one by one and explain, quietly and without drama, what his choice had cost her. That was the consequence I had told him about. Not a fight. Not an ultimatum. Not a performance of anger designed to make him feel bad. Just the full visibility of what he had done, delivered in real time, in his own living room, through his own phone contacts. When I finished the last call, I set my phone down on the coffee table and I looked at him. He looked like a man who had spent 3 hours understanding something he should have understood on Wednesday night. He said, I didn't think about what it would feel like for you to find out. I said, I know. He said, I thought about how happy I was. I didn't think about what you had asked me. Not really. I heard you and I said yes, and then I called my mom anyway because the happiness was louder than the promise. I sat with that for a moment. I said, thank you for saying that honestly. He said, I'm sorry, Rachel. I know that's not enough right now, but I am. I said, I know you are. I want to tell you what happened after. Not because it is dramatic. Because it is real. We had the 12-week screening 3 weeks later. I went alone, the way I had gone to the first appointment, because I was not ready to let hope be a shared thing until the numbers came back. The technician did the measurements. The doctor reviewed them. The results were good. Better than good. Everything where it needed to be, the risk numbers low, the heartbeat strong, the small collection of cells on the screen looking, against all my fear and caution, like a person being assembled. I sat in the parking lot after and I called Daniel. He answered on the first ring. I said, it's good. Everything is good. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, in a voice that was not entirely steady, can I tell my mom? I laughed. Actually laughed. The real laugh, the one that catches you off guard, the one that means something has moved in you that you did not expect to move. I said, yes. You can tell your mom. Carol let go a small dinner 3 weeks after that. Nothing formal. Just family. Daniel sighed, sitting around a table with food and the particular ease of people who have gotten through something uncomfortable and have come out the other side with a more honest understanding of each other. She hugged me when I arrived and held on for a moment longer than a casual hug. She did not say anything. She did not need to. The hug was the apology and the acknowledgement and the recognition all at once, and I received it as all three. At dinner, Marcus made a toast. He is not a subtle man, and the toast was not subtle. He said, to Rachel, who handled everything with more grace than most people would have, and to Daniel, who we all hope has learned something. Everyone laughed. Daniel included. I held my glass up and I looked around the table at these people who were my family by marriage and who had been, a month earlier, 14 nodes in a network of information I had not authorized, and I felt something that surprised me. Not resentment. Warmth. The complicated, honest warmth of people who had been through something real together and were still at the table. The baby is due in 4 months. I am 24 weeks now. The fear has not disappeared, but it has changed shape. It is less sharp. More like a low hum in the background that I have learned to function around rather than the foreground noise it was in the first trimester. The screenings have all come back clear. The appointments I now attend with Daniel, who has not missed one since the 12-week scan, who sits next to me and holds my hand and does not say anything when I cry a little at the heartbeat because after everything, Hearing it still surprises me with how much it means. He is a better husband now than he was before that Saturday. Not because the breach was good or because the consequence was proportionate in some satisfying way. But because he understands something now that he did not understand before. He understands that my requests are not optional extras that he can weigh against his own impulses and decide about. He understands that what I ask for in my most vulnerable moments is the place where trust is either built or broken. And he understands that I will not fight loudly, but I will act quietly and completely, and he will feel the full shape of what he has done. He told me once, a few weeks after everything, that the calls were harder to hear than a fight would have been. I said, I know. He said, you weren't angry. You were just honest. I said, anger passes. Honesty stays. He nodded. He has thought about that sentence, I know. I have seen him think about it in the particular way he gets quiet sometimes and is processing something he is not ready to say out loud yet. I want to tell you what I learned. Not as advice exactly. As the honest accounting of a woman who asked for one thing and did not get it and then had to decide what to do with that. I learned that asking is not enough. Not because asking is wrong, but because asking only works when the person you are asking understands what the ask costs you. Daniel heard my words. He did not hear the weight behind them. He did not hear the 14 months and the entailing and the specific grief of having to say out loud over and over that the thing you were celebrating no longer exists. He heard me and he felt my happiness, and his happiness was louder, and he acted from his happiness without sitting long enough inside what I had actually told him. I learned that consequences do not have to be loud to be real. I did not yell at Daniel. I did not give him an ultimatum. I did not pressure or withdraw or perform my upset for an audience. I just showed him, in the most direct and undeniable way I could find, what his choice looked like from the outside. I let his family hear from me what he had done. Not cruelly. Just honestly. And honest visibility, it turns out, is its own kind of consequence. Sometimes more lasting than the loud kind. I learned that the people in your life will reveal themselves in the moments that cost you the most. Patrice called me because she thought I knew. She did not have to tell me anything, but she told me immediately and honestly, and that told me something real about who she is. Carol mobilized her entire network within hours of understanding what had happened. That told me something real about who she is too. Marcus made a toast that named what had happened directly instead of smoothing over it. These are the people I am going to be raising a child around, and I know them better now than I did before. I learned that trust is not a single conversation. It is a pattern of choices made when the conversation is over and no one is watching. Daniel said whatever you need on a Tuesday morning, and then on Wednesday night he made 3 phone calls. The distance between those two things is where the real information lies. And I have been watching the distance since then. I'm glad to say it has been closing. 4 months. The room is almost ready. We painted it last weekend, both of us, in a color we argued about for 2 weeks and finally agreed on, a soft green that changes with the light in a way that I did not expect and now cannot imagine changing. Daniel assembled the crib on a Sunday afternoon, and I sat in the chair in the corner and watched him and thought about the Tuesday morning 2 pink lines and the fear and the call to the doctor and the appointment alone in the parking lot and Carol's hug and the dinner and the toast. All of it led here. To a green room and an assembled crib and a man who is trying, genuinely and with the specific effort of someone who understands what trying actually costs, to be the partner I asked him to be. He is not perfect. I am not perfect. We are 2 people who love each other and who have learned, in the specific and uncomfortable way that real learning happens, something true about what that love requires from both of us. He looked up from the crib when it was finished and said, "What do you think?" I looked at it. At the room. At him. I said, "I think we're going to be okay." He smiled. The real one. And this time I believed it too. Here is the only thing I want to leave you with. When you ask someone to protect something that matters to you, you are not asking them to do you a favor. You are asking them to demonstrate, in a specific and measurable way, whether the love they say they have for you includes respect for what you need when what you need is inconvenient for them. Some people pass that test. Some people do not. The ones who do not always have reasons. Good ones sometimes. Reasons that make sense when they explain them. Reasons that are true. The reasons do not change the breach. What you do after the breach is where the real relationship lives. Daniel broke my trust on a Wednesday night and spent the next 3 hours on a Saturday listening to me repair the damage one phone call at a time. And then he spent the next 4 months showing me who he was when the choice was not easy. That is the man I married. Not the one who made the calls. The one who sat in the living room and listened and did not look away. Hold the people in your life to what they say when it costs them something. That is the only way to know if they mean it.